it's not worth it to chase the dragon and miss these really important things if that's what you want. And don't let other people convince you that's not what you want. I thought, you're famous and so you get all these things. But really, I think for anyone I know that's famous now, it's quite the opposite. It became a very unhealthy dynamic for a long time. And, I would just go as far as saying it was toxic. I started playing open mics in LA just because I was mostly bored and lonely. It's so beautiful. Sorry, it kind of chokes me up a little. And like it's a level of love and God that I've never experienced. I don't think I've ever heard my music sound like this or been more excited about where it's at. And it is different.
First of all, this is my voice. I'm Tim Green and I have ALS. This podcast is not about ALS or living with disabilities. I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I don't feel sorry for me. I am a father of 5 with a marriage that's lasted for over 33 years. I am a #1 New York Times best-selling author of 41 books, an NFL first-round pick with an 8-year career. I worked on TV for Fox Sports, Good Morning America, Court TV, and Extra. I've hosted BattleBots, A Current Affair, and Find My Family. And I am also a practicing attorney. In this podcast, we're diving into real-life stories. From triumphs to trials, we'll explore the extraordinary in the ordinary. Join me, Tim Green, and my son Troy each week for real conversations, laughter, and insights. Because life is a journey, and everyone's got a story. My voice in today's episode is powered by 11 Labs. Suzanne Santo, since you were young, you have been a multi-talented singer. You have also been an actress, model, musician, and a songwriter. Welcome to our podcast, Suzanne, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
From a very early age, you played the violin. Did you have aspirations to do what you're doing now when you were just a child?
Well, originally I wanted to play the cello, but then I realized you had to carry it around. So I was like, let's downsize a little bit. But, well, this is sort of embarrassing to admit because I feel so differently about this now. But when I was a little kid, I just wanted to be famous. Like I thought that was the goal, and as I matured and I had respect for my crafts and creativity and art, it meant so much more to me to be a creative and actually have a private life and, just be as good as I could possibly be as a songwriter and, multi-instrumentalist. But when I was young, I just I wanted to, I would see Lucille Ball on television and cause I would watch Nick at Night on the weekends. And I just wanted to be like her. I wanted to put on a show and sing and dance and make people laugh. But that really changed as I really dove into the industry, which is a very unforgiving one. And, just sort of kind of existed in the world after streaming and things like that, where, music is a real slog in terms of a job for someone like me. But I guess I always wanted that as a child. I just didn't really articulate it very well in my, 5 or 6 year old mind.
Was the pressure different when you were trying to be famous versus just appreciating the music?
When I say trying to be famous, that's like my dreams in suburban Ohio. I wasn't really, that's just any kid. You think you're like, oh, I want to live in a big house and have lots of money. And that's how you do it. Sure. Couldn't be farther from the truth. But, these days music's kind of like an act of service a little bit, which I also don't really have as much of a problem with. But no, I think my dreams of just, getting these questions answered that I'd always had in my soul. And I was very incorrect on the vehicles for those questions. I thought, you're famous and so you get all these things. But really, I think for anyone I know that's famous now, it's quite the opposite. And so you actually have to be really careful. And I have kids and a husband and a family. That means everything to me. So when it comes to that sort of thing, I prefer a private life, but I also appreciate, when people like my work. That's great. But now that I'm older and, can understand what the world is like a little bit better, um, being famous is the last thing I want.
Suzanne, I've been listening to your music and it's raw, soulful, and deeply personal. Your voice has this haunting beauty that stays with you. Take us back. What was the moment you knew music would be your life? And who did you get your music acumen from?
I was, I was a working actor for a few years in my late teens and early 20s. And I was really fortunate enough there was this like window in my life where I sort of had this just I could do anything kind of motivation, and in some ways I did. All the things I went out for with true ambition, I I either got the job or it furthered my career in some way. And when I was very young, when I was 19, well, I was living in New York City from age 16 to 19, and I moved to Los Angeles, and it was very, very different in the acting world. It wasn't like this sort of kind of theater-based indie movie scene like New York was, where I loved my acting class. And my acting teacher was this seasoned theater actress, and I learned so much about art and philosophy and playwrights and all kind, like the real source of a lot of great storytelling. And LA was very different, and your propensity to work was mostly based off of how you looked as opposed to how good you were. It's probably both, but at the time it was just very disheartening. And I started, you just get rejected a lot. And it's a field that I have a lot of respect for people who stick with it, but I had done it for too long at that point. And I was also really sad when I got to Los Angeles. It was just very lonely for me for a while. I'm from the Midwest, and I have a certain kind of values, and I couldn't find friends that were like me. So, in that loneliness, I started writing songs, and some pretty bad ones from the jump. I'm not going to lie. they were, they were a first step into what I'm doing now. But, it was one of those situations where my Craigslist roommate, her best friend was a booker for an open mic night, and her other best friend was an engineer in the studio. And I just met these people, and like before I knew it, I was playing my first show, and it happened so fast. And this was the early aughts, so I mean, my music was on MySpace, so not to age myself, but you could do the math. I um was almost instantly getting record labels calling from all over the world. I mean, it was wild. And I also was just so fulfilled artistically, knowing that I loved playing. At the time it was guitar and violin. Eventually I picked up the banjo, and just writing songs was and still is one of my favorite things to do, along with performing. And I mean, the first open mic night I played, I'm still friends with the people I met that night, and they were all sort of bridges to these other, I met this person, and we started a band. And I was in a couple bands before I started releasing my own solo music. So it was it was like God was kind of just telling me, hey, do this, don't do that anymore. And so I quit acting, and I kind of like, re-empowered myself too, because acting is as fun as it was, and as cool as it was sometimes, you really don't have much of a say in it. It's not, unless you're writing your own material, and God knows that's not in up my alley here. But it's just sort of, you kind of show up, and it's sort of like winning the lottery, even if you're doing a great job. So switching over to music, it was like just so glaringly obvious that that's what I should have been doing. And I'm really grateful for that. I'm grateful that, I didn't have to question myself. It was just very, hey, you should do this.
Do you think you would have ended up in music even if you had stayed in New York, or do you think you might have never
I have
known this?
wondered that a lot, because funny enough, like when I was younger, I was kind of at like the top of the casting director's list back in the day. And I was always neck and neck with like some of the stars that are very successful today. So
Mhm.
like I was just, I kind of took it for granted. And I also um, think that there was some sort of like, divine guidance that didn't let me get successful. And so I wonder if I would have gotten lazy. And I think the answer is yes. I think, or maybe I wouldn't have had as much respect for music because sometimes the actor music transition is kind of weird.
Mhm.
It doesn't go as well for people. And, you know, uh, look, I just to be how do I say this respectfully? A lot of actors can kind of get, your ego can get in the way,
Mhm.
and I think very few have made that transition well, you know,
Mhm.
not to sound judgy, but uh yeah, I think that I would have had a different take on music if I were some successful actor, like just like do 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 do. I'm doing great. Sure, I'll just play a little guitar. I might not
Sure.
have put in the full effort.
And then this is probably an annoying question, but I'm just so curious because you said you were right there on a couple of parts. What was
Uh-huh.
the biggest thing that you were like right there and you didn't get?
Um, there was a part on the show called Treme on HBO, which was about New Orleans. It was David Simon's other big show after The Wire. I think I have to don't quote me because I could be getting that wrong. But I got flown to New York from LA and read for producers and for David Simon. And at the time, that was one of my last auditions.
Mhm.
And before I quit, but at the time, I was just dead broke. And I thought, like, oh, I'm either going to move to New Orleans and be on this HBO show, or I'm going to have to go back to bartending. And I had to go back to bartending, and there's a good couple months, and I'd be like, "Here's your Jack and Coke and your 3 stupid Bud Lights." Like, I was just so mad. Damn it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was one that, like, it was like my life was, like, real fork in the road. You're either going this way or that way, and they're both very different worlds.
Yeah.
You grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. How did that environment shape you as an artist? Was there a moment or an artist that lit that fire in you?
Sure, yeah. Well, I love where I'm from. I'm from, Parma and Strongsville, Ohio. They're 2 suburbs that are about 20 minutes south of Cleveland, and my family owned a restaurant that my grandparents started called Santo's, and it's still going. It's almost 60 years old. It's all my grandma's recipes, and so I kinda grew up in, like, the restaurant kinda feels like show business in a way where there's a lot of passion involved, especially, like, this particular restaurant with, like, when my grandparents were still alive, and my dad and my uncles ran it, and I worked there with my sisters and my cousins, and, it's where I learned to socialize. It's where I fell in love with crooner music, like Rosemary Clooney and Louis Prima and Frank Sinatra and stuff like that was always playing, and so I always loved jazz and that kind of area of music, which is pretty complicated in some ways. And as a violinist, that was always fun when I would like kind of dapple in that. I am really far from being good at it because it's very like technical playing. But I would say, as an inspiration, I I was so inspired by the romance of music, just the way that love is expressed or longing. And I can't say like anyone in particular, like I want to be like that, like because like pop music was never really appealing to me. I mean, I love some pop music, but I I like to play and write. So, a lot of the times anytime I have gotten just to sing, it's always fun. But there's this part of me that's like, what do I do with my hands? Like I'm not holding
Ricky
a guitar,
Bobby.
so I gotta, kind of figure this out. But I think I was just inspired in this um I love my family. I come from a good family, and um I think music always was this like togetherness thing for me. It still is. And I like I have always liked the event of it, So I guess I hope that answers your question good and well enough. But yeah, I don't really have like a person, but just growing up with so much music around me. And my dad was in a band in the 70s. So, he and I always like to drive around and sing harmony parts to like Journey or something. Or he was a big Jethro Tull fan. I was like, man, if that guy can rock the flute, like somebody can rock the violin at some point, right? But I think a part of that inspiration, you know, was that I really wanted to make my dad proud too, because he was a musician and he had fun with it, but it wasn't like a serious career drive. So I always kind of share this special bond with him and my mother, um, because you still want them to say, "Hey, you did a great job," I'm proud of you, and that just like means the world to me.
So you play at least the violin and the guitar. Do you play any other instruments, and how difficult is that to do?
I do. I play the banjo, but I haven't picked it up in a while. And it's a great instrument. I love it. It's very cumbersome. The banjo I played in my former band, HoneyHoney, was 19 pounds. So, like my left shoulder is like an inch or two higher than my right. There's just sort of your sports injuries, right? If you will. You kind of get these things that are really strange with your body, especially, back in the day when I toured all the time, I'd just be like lugging my stuff around an airport, which is not very fun. It was the worst. But um you know, the string instruments are all kind of cousins for one another, in my opinion. So when I'm playing my guitar a lot, but I haven't picked up my violin in a minute, when I pick up the violin, it's not as hard to just start off in a decent category, because your muscle memory is strong. So since I've been doing my solo music, I don't really play the banjo anymore. To my mother's dismay, she's like, "I'd like to see that banjo up there." And I was like, "All right, mom, well, you're not the boss of me." Um, but, at some point, I'd like to pick up another instrument. I'd love to get better at piano. I do a lot of recording at home, and I can like play. Obviously, it's kind of easy to play chords, but when you're trying to play quickly, like I had to put tape on the keys so I know which notes are which. I'd like to graduate past that and, just be able to play some decent, basic level piano. That would be nice.
You're in good company. We don't have, between the two of us, we couldn't play one note on a piano. So
I'll bet you could figure it out. Maybe by default. I don't know.
we might accidentally hit one.
Those are the best notes.
Tell us about your family growing up. Was there anyone who was particularly influential in your life?
Yeah, I had my mom and dad who are still together and my two sisters. And my sisters and I fought a lot. We're we're all very different. Um, but we also love each other a lot. We're Italian, so we're loud and passionate. And there's a lot of emotion in the Santo family, but we're also very loyal and we love each other. I I'm very close with my mother and father, and we've had like it feels like we've had 100 lifetimes together. We've been through a lot as a family, and in some ways, I kind of idolized my parents when I was a kid. Um, they're they're very attractive and they're very funny, and we always had like some kind of family event, whether we're having dinner with my grandparents or we're always celebrating birthdays. Like I have a huge family in Cleveland, lots of cousins and aunts and uncles, and that's a real blessing. Especially now since I live in Texas and I don't get to see everybody very often. I think that that always had a huge effect on me. And in truth, moving to Los Angeles to pursue my career kind of alienated me from my family because I could only make it home so often. And when I was younger, I would make it home and try and stay for a month if I could, just so I could see my family all the time. And so, you know, I guess in terms of my influence, my mom and dad are hugely influential as far as who I am and my values in life. But in a lot of ways, family values are incompatible with the music industry, and so I never really fit into the industry, but I also kind of put a lot of my pain into my music and rock and roll, and it comes off, some of my lyrics are kind of racy, but a lot of it's metaphor, and a lot of that is just like me kind of being angry for like not having this other life too, because it's very incompatible, especially for women. Touring is like, if you're gone all the time, how it's going to be tough to keep a boyfriend. so it's funny to have valued my family and value them as much as I still do, and then have this other life of like rock and roll and being like, I want to get married and I want to be a mother and do all these things. And thank God I didn't miss the boat on that. And I met my husband when I moved to Austin. But yeah, I think like my family still influences my life and just like the things that I treasure. But they always did, even when I was younger.
Are there other people you think in the music industry that feel that way, or do you think it's very scarce? I mean, people who kind of have those values but aren't able
I
to show
think
them.
I think there's got to be more people like me that and the music industry is just so disjointed now. It's like everything's about your social media, and you make your own content and all this stuff that it becomes a very different um style of working and creating. So a lot of people can be home with their families and have very successful careers, which is what I aim to do and what I'm kind of figuring out now, because I really don't want to tour anymore unless I'm making a lot of money because it's not worth it. And I can only bring my little toddler with me for so long before she's got other stuff to do. But yeah, I think there's a lot of people out there. I look forward to, if I ever get the opportunity to open up the discussion with women, and you know, it really is kind of unkind to women in music, just the way that, like, if it depends on the kind of music you're playing. Like if you're in a wedding band, you're great. You can probably live in your hometown and be very successful. But a
Mhm.
touring musician, that's just, you get opportunities and you don't want to say no because they're furthering your career and, filling up your bank account. Um, and like 2020 was a really powerful year for me and for a lot of people, obviously. But I was 35 and like, holy crap, I think I missed it. I think I missed my great love and the husband I dream about and kids. I think I missed it and I was devastated, and then spent the year praying and reflecting and trying to understand my life, because for a while nobody thought the music industry was going to come back. I was playing shows in my living room on Zoom, and you're just like, I guess this is buck stops here. It's been a fun ride, but I'm so grateful and so fortunate that I met my husband when we did, and we just have this, like, our time together is so precious to me because he's my favorite thing in the world, and so are our kids. And so to that end, like, I'd love to share my story with other women at some point and just say, hey, it's not worth it to chase the dragon and miss these really important things if that's what you want. And don't let other people convince you that's not what you want if you really want it, because Los Angeles has that, like, be single and empowered for the rest of your life. And it's not true.
What was that? How, I guess I'm like kind of begging the question, but how awkward was it playing in like your living room versus like how different was it? I mean, you have people
You know,
yelling versus
I
just
I
two.
can exist in a lot of awkward situations, so it wasn't that bad. I was fine. I've done it all. Like, I've played in the most embarrassing, like, corporate gigs. Those are hilarious because they bring you in to like some sort of like, annual staff retreat, and everybody's wasted and they're all trying to climb the ladder to like, network, and you're just sitting in the corner playing your like heartfelt songs. Those are the most hilarious. And like, you just gotta keep your chin up and be grateful for the paycheck. But no, I mean, I liked playing in my living room. I kind of during COVID, I did some vocal training for people and helped them with their songs and did coaching, music coaching, and that was pretty rewarding actually. Um, but ideally, you want to sit in front of a crowd if you
Right.
can help it.
Yeah. It
Yeah,
seems like the connection would be so much stronger.
100%. Yeah, definitely.
You're obviously very beautiful, but how did you become a model and how did you make the leap from that into acting?
Well, thank you. I You know, I was 14. I just had this like huge growth spurt because I was like real chubby the year before. And then all of a sudden I grew like 2 inches taller. And I, people would say stuff to me about it. And like, by the way, I just want to say, like, I wasn't cool. Like it wasn't like I was pretty and then everybody liked me. Like I had my friends. I played soccer, so I had a lot of friends on the soccer team and more of the athletic side of high school. And truth be told, my sisters who were popular went to they went to Holy Name, which is in Parma, Ohio. And I thought for sure I was going to go there because that's where my sisters went and then I'll be cool too. But oddly, I got a scholarship for violin to the arch rival high school, Padua Franciscan, and I was on my own. And so I was at not only a different school, but an arch rival school. And, I people would, my parents' friends or somebody would say, you should be a model. And there was an ad in the paper and I asked my mom to take me to an audition. And it was just like, from there, I had an agent and I was working all the time in Cleveland, just local catalog stuff, but enough to like accumulate a decent amount of money by the time I was 16. But I spent my summer in Chicago when I was 15 working there. And then the following summer, I went to Tokyo and I worked in Tokyo for about 6 or 7 weeks. And then when I moved home, and I was about to start my junior year, I just asked my parents if they'd let me go to New York and meet with some agents. And it was very positive. And when I look back at this and I think about like my 16-year-old stepdaughter now, or just the world, that is insane.
I was going to say,
I mean, I am so lucky that like nothing bad ever happened to me. Like I was just, and I had like I was from Cleveland. Like I just thought everybody's good and everybody's nice. And like fortunately, I learned, but not in the hard way. I'm so grateful I was never got into too much trouble or anything like that. But acting was just sort of like the next thing after booking. I booked commercials in New York. Like I was doing like a Pizza Hut commercial, which is the rival to my family's restaurant. Sorry. Sorry, grandma and grandpa. But I was doing commercials and booking them pretty often. And then, before you know it, there's an agency that wants you to go out for stuff. And my first job was on Law and Order. And that was really exciting. And, the funny thing about acting is if you're like in and out and you're not, you don't just like shoot to the top, you probably have a restaurant job. And I think I've waited on almost every like big actor I ever worked with. I waited on at least 3 of them in the restaurants I worked at. So, it's really humbling. But yeah, I mean, it just modeling is a really weird industry too. And I'm really fortunate. Like I never got into eating disorders or anything like that. I was just kind of a natural athlete. And so I was lucky, but when it was time to be over, it was over. And, I did it for about 4 years and I don't recommend it for young girls, especially today. But I think sometimes when I think about those things, like I come from a good family and we're very close, and so that's part of it. Is I'm held accountable, and so I think that was probably one of the bigger reasons they let me move to New York as a teenager. But yeah, it's a wild experience.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Really.
My daughter's a lot younger. She's 5, almost 6. And the thought of her being 30 and saying I want to leave scares me. So
Yeah,
16, no
it's
way.
oh my God, it's just it's a different world, you know. I grew up running around outside for hours without checking in with my parents. Like I just can't, you know, unless we move out to the country, which I would prefer. Uh, you can't do that anymore, you know.
Mhm.
You just can't. But here we are doing our best.
What was your favorite acting gig you had?
The biggest thing I ever did was an independent film called Imaginary Heroes with Sigourney Weaver and Jeff Daniels. And I had a small role on it, but you know, a decent sized role. And that was a blast to work with them, especially like coming out of Ohio and like being a huge fan of Dumb and Dumber. But I was also given the disclaimer because Jeff Daniels is a very serious actor and very method, meaning like he was always in character, and his character was like an unhappy man. so so you know, production was like, hey, you know, I was like 18 at the time, like, you know, just FYI, like under no circumstances are you to bring up or make any jokes about Dumb and Dumber, you know. And at the time you're like, well, that's half my vocabulary, like every other joke is this Jim Carrey joke, you know. But it was a great experience. It was how I made enough money to move to LA and get a car and all that, and it was fun. It was great.
And how did you make the transition from acting to professional musician?
I started playing open mics in LA just because I was mostly bored and lonely, and music was the only solace I could find in this place. Like, you know, I'm not the kind of I was 19. I wasn't gonna just like go to a bar to make friends or something. You know, I was like home alone a lot, and so I had my dad's guitar and I taught myself how to play, and just started, you know, like I said, writing this most pitiful songs you've ever heard and will never hear if I have anything to do with it.
We're not getting those re-released, huh?
No.
Well, your lyrics now are deeply evocative, full of longing and resilience. What does your songwriting process look like? Are you someone who writes in bursts of inspiration, or do you have a disciplined routine?
You know, I used to have a very disciplined routine. I came at it from, you know, I mean, I never truly committed to 8 hours every day, but I wanted to have that, you know, master level experience with just putting all this energy into it, whether it's practicing or writing. And I could really get into that when I was in LA, when I was single, you know, like living alone basically. But I'm a mom now, and when I do write, it's really special because I'm always my baby turns 17 months this month, and um and this is not a complaint because I love it. I love being a wife and a mother. I love cooking dinner for my family. I love being together and playing games and just having quality time. Um, Something I've had to learn since, you know, Rosie, my baby's growing up a little, is that I have to make the time for myself. And so, because I can't abandon music because it's kind of like my first baby in a lot of ways. And I couldn't, I think if I tried, I think it would be too haunting. So now when I work, um, it's really beautiful because now when I work and when I play, because I don't have the practice time, um, when I approach it, it's like I have all this stuff that's available, right? Whether it's my stress or my pain or my thoughts or something that's just been churning that I need to exercise and figure out what that is. So when I write now, it's interesting, one, because it's from a fulfilled place, not a place of longing. Um, so that's been really interesting because that's first time. That's pretty new. So, you know, writing love songs as opposed to breakup songs is also a real hoot. But yeah, I have someone that helps me a few days a week. So during that time, I like go down to my little office and I get to work, and I treat that time with a lot of respect because this is your only opportunity to work. It's not like when I was younger, living alone, where I could just wake up and play for 3 hours if I wanted to, or, write any time of the day.
Mhm.
So in that way, it is challenging because like sometimes when you sit down during those windows, like the muse or the thing isn't there. And you're like, all right, well, I'll have to keep trying until it shows up again. And that's just more patience and discipline. Um, and to that end, I'm just like, I'm kind of grateful I'm very grateful for having a schedule with a family because, like, you know, when you're on a routine, um, I love it. It keeps me in line as an artist. My husband says the same thing too, because, you know, what we really want is to just hang out with each other. But we also have to work. So when you have like X amount of hours and you don't use it properly, it's your fault.
Mhm.
So it's definitely a very different approach these days, and it takes me a little longer to finish the job. But I think I'm making the best music I've ever made, so it's worth the wait. Um, and yeah, I'm just grateful I get to have the other thing, the thing I used to write about when I was sad.
Did your I was gonna ask you about that actually, like, you mentioned since you had your daughter, your music's kind of been happier and more fulfilling, and I was wondering if you liked that. Obviously, your daughter's worth it no matter what, but if you just looked at the music, do you think your music's better when you're writing from a place of happiness or writing from a place of maybe stress and
Well,
sadness?
yes and no. I should put a disclaimer out there. I have a lot of heavy music coming out, but it's more like world related. It's more like trying to understand what's happening to us as people and as a species even. And the things I fear and worry about because I mean, you guys have kids, so like once you have this kind of just immeasurable love and
Mhm.
care for someone else in your life, like other things can get a lot scarier. Like, you
Right.
know, I definitely have like a lot of the same heavier material, but it's different. It's not like about um my loneliness or my confusion with where I'm at in my life, This is more introspective in ways that I guess I've matured or something. But writing from the place of fulfillment and love for my man or for our kids is really powerful. I wrote a song for my daughter and it's like really hard for me to get through it live without like kind of choking because I start to
That's
cry.
awesome.
So I
Is that
don't play
song
very often.
is that song out or it's coming out?
Not yet. It's called If You Get Lost, and it's really sweet, and it's for her. And yeah, I've had a couple times where I actually just finished a residency in Austin at a place called Sea Boys. That was really fun. And one of my husband's friends asked me to play it, and I was like, I don't think I can. I need to work on it.
Many of your songs carry themes of love, heartbreak, and personal evolution. Is there one song in particular that feels like it defines a chapter of your life?
So I guess in terms of like, I mean, a lot of them do. There's many chapters. Um, I think my early well, I got to think about that. I guess the first thing that comes to mind is I wrote a song for my husband. I don't know if I'm going to change the title, but right now, working title is called This Love with You. And I sang it for him at our wedding. And I haven't released it yet, and I'm going to soon. But the chorus says, I know God in this love with you. Now I know God in this love with you. And I mean that is it in a nutshell. I think loving him so much and having this like higher voice that speaks to us through our relationship is like nothing I've ever experienced before. So it's so beautiful. Sorry, it kind of chokes me up a little. And like it's a level of love and God that I've never experienced. And I think that that's like a big secret is that, you know, finding God in each other, especially through like a passionate relationship is like, I mean, there's no comparison to any other experience in my life. And, I love that song. I love to play it for him. And I hope other people feel that as deeply as I do, as an understanding that like, you know, if that's the an area of your life that you want to access, you know, spiritually, um, it's like we just always have God in our marriage, and it's so powerful. So that song would sum up this chapter of my life for sure.
That's a perfect segue to what I was going to ask you. I know that you are a very spiritual person. So am I. Christianity saved my life. Have you ever experienced a crisis of proportion? And has anyone close to you been a Christian and talked to you about Jesus? I ask you with no judgment because Jesus himself forbade judgment of others.
Yeah, thank you. That's so beautiful. Well, I was raised Catholic, so you know, I had not the best relationship, if any relationship, I think when I was younger. I'd have to say that you know, I did what I was supposed to. I went to Catholic school, went to church every Sunday, and I said the prayers, and I I've always believed in God. But I don't think I had a personal relationship with Jesus and or with Christ and God until I was older. And my life is too weird and unexplainable not to have any kind of higher power because so many things have happened that you can't explain. And that to me always points to God, making his presence known. And um, my husband was also raised Catholic. And now where God exists in my life, I mean, he's a real compass now. And it's overwhelmingly powerful and beautiful, to say the least, and to share that with someone, which is something I've never had the opportunity to do, and to be totally honest, just, you know, living in Los Angeles, I've actually, I've been made fun of for prayer and like and it was really painful just to sort of like, uh, kind of encounter, I don't want to say disrespect because I can always handle that, but you know, it was just a really strange feeling when you're like you kind of want to hide it or something. You want to hide your faith or your beliefs. And um, now my husband and I pray a rosary every morning, which is one of my favorite things to do and to start our day. And you know, in full transparency, we don't go to church, and we'd like to find a church, which would, it may or may not be Catholic, but we incorporate prayer into our days and our conversations so often that, um, like as it stands, I've never had this much God in my life. And I love it, and it's beautiful, and it's really important to us, and to share that with our children. So, you know, I honestly really came back to Christ, with my husband.
I've heard you were on an episode of Joe Rogan where you talked about acid, an acid trip
Yeah.
that was a spiritual. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure, yeah. I mean, you know, I kick myself a little bit for some of my candidness on previous podcasts, but, you know, you gotta live with your choices, and when it comes time to talk about those things with my kids, we will talk about them.
Yeah.
But I did it, and it's a funny thing, you know, I was with my best girlfriend, and it was like it almost felt, and by the way, I wanna say this because, you know, psychedelics are not for everyone, and I don't recommend everyone do it. But if you are going to do it, I would always advocate for the spiritual side of it and not like don't go to a concert. Like you should reflect and see if you see what you see, you know? And I've always approached it that way. It's like just from a private standpoint. Like I wouldn't want to be around people I didn't know. That's very scary to me. But yeah, I think that what I experienced in the desert with my best girlfriend was some kind of precursor to getting me to move to Austin, which is like where my life changed so fast. And, I moved here and I met my husband 3 weeks later. And part of that trip out to the desert with my girlfriend was that I was like kind of asking God to be, now that I can sort of step back and look at it, like, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to leave this place I've been in for 20 years? And, you kind of, I'd convinced myself this is the only place to work. And moving to a brand new town where I didn't know anyone, I knew two people, was really scary and a real leap of faith. And this journey out to the desert with my friend, like I got those answers, and it was very, we both felt like we were visited by some force. And it, yeah, I moved about 2 months later after that, just out. And yeah, I do think that there are um opportunities to have a communication with a higher power in that way, but you should be really careful and not everyone should do it. That's my
Disclaimer.
2 cents.
Why did you pick to move to Austin and not somewhere else? Like, what about Austin was it?
Um, well, true story, Rogan talked me into moving here. And I wanted to come down in December of 2020 to see him and Dave Chappelle perform at Stubbs because I was living in Los Angeles where like you couldn't go anywhere, like you had to wear a mask outside, and it was
Yeah.
ridiculous, like just absurd. And I wasn't without like, I know we don't want to talk about politics, but I was waking up around then and understanding that the things outside and the things I'm being told aren't quite what they seem. And Joe had already moved with his family. And I'd always wanted to see Dave Chappelle. And I love Joe, but I was like, hey, I think I want to come to Austin. Should I drive? And he's like, get on a plane. You're going to have a great time. And I ended up coming down here, and I did that podcast with Gary Clark, the one you're talking about. And it was really strange, actually. I guess if you want to know the truth, this is like one of those, like, I can't explain this things that happened. But I didn't really know my way around Austin at all. And I was driving after the podcast, just like driving around. And it was a sober podcast. Nobody had any alcohol, which is rare. And I knew two people in Austin other than Joe, who just moved there, and Gary, right? And I was driving down a neighborhood street, not even like a main road, and there were two people walking in front of my car with their dog, and I slowed down, and it was Shaky Graves, who's an artist here, and he's very successful, and I'd done a song with him a year prior, and like I was like, oh my God, like the one other person in this whole city, and I literally almost ran him over. But after that, Joe called me and was like, hey, you really should leave LA. Like, just, what are you doing there? Let me
Were you
tell you,
guys,
like, Austin is the place for you. And I just went for it. I just
were
did
you
it.
guys really good friends? Like, that seems like such a,
Yeah. He's a busy guy. But we've been friends for like, almost 15 years.
oh,
And,
cool.
and he's like almost single-handedly like changed my career and given me a lot of support. And yeah, I met Joe in 2010.
Before
Pretty
it was that
crazy.
big.
I
Yeah.
know, I know. But
He
I don't.
recruited a lot of people moved. Like when he moved,
Yeah,
I listened to his podcast a
he brought
decent
the
amount,
whole
not
comedy
everyone, but
scene. He brought everybody from Los Angeles here.
yeah.
Um, no, I adore him and his family, and I ran into his wife the other day. It's like a small town here, so but like, yeah, he's someone that I'm sure, and this is proven in the past. Like, if I ever needed anything and I called him, he would show up. He's a good guy like that.
Yeah. Other people have said that too. Somebody
Yeah.
else just had, yeah, I just saw a clip about someone else saying the same thing.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I was wondering out of all the places why Austin, and I know it's right around that time that a lot of people from California were moving there.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone in
But
New York.
now we're thinking about what's next, just because the city's kind of it's a little crazy and we want some land. So we're not sure. We're trying to figure it out.
Texas has got a lot of room.
Yeah. Just like a little outside kind of thing sounds nice to me.
How did you first meet Joe Rogan?
He found us, my old band, HoneyHoney. The famous story goes like this, and this was back when like Joe had a message board and anybody could message him and he would respond and like, build his platform from there. And there was someone with the handle Balls of Steel who commented on Joe's message board and it had shared a video of me singing on like a rooftop in Los Angeles, our song Angel of Death. And this is funny because like I don't know what record deal I was on at that point. I've had so many, and it was like just another big fat disappointment. Like you thought, oh, this is going to be great. And then no one knows what they're doing. And, they're all alcoholics. And you're just like, I put my career in the hands of these people again. Oh God. And at the time, our record was like, woo, and we got a call from our manager and he was like, oh, do you guys know that Joe Rogan's talking about you on his podcast? And I was like, who's Joe Rogan? The guy from Fear Factor. And then our record company is like, oh, your record sales went up 700% this week. And our record had been out for 2 years, which like that never happens,
Wow.
And so before I knew it, we were just, he had us on as guests and like whenever we'd go on, we'd like either go to a comedy show or, he's such an easy friend, he's such an easy person to love and, and we just became fast friends. And, it was like winning the lottery, like I didn't do anything other than what I was already doing. So we were very fortunate to have that kind of exposure and, to make friends with him.
Wherever you are, thank you, Balls of Steel.
Yeah, thank you, Balls of Steel. We've never found out who it is. It's never come up. He never revealed himself.
This is a call into the universe. Balls of Steel.
I know. Where are you? That's so funny.
Maybe it's
Troy, tell Suzanne about the soldiers we have had on that talked about psychedelics.
Oh yeah, we've had a lot of other people too, I think, on the spot, but we've had a few soldiers who have used psychedelics for like PTSD and stuff like that and swear by it and how impactful it's been for them. And more than one, it's kind of helped, not the reason, but it's helped turn them to religion, to God. Specifically, those ones were Christianity.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's wonderful. I get embarrassed talking about it because I don't want someone to get the wrong idea. But I mean, I've had the most powerful God experiences with psychedelics, and it's I'm a huge believer. But as a musician, I don't want it to come out the wrong way. I really it's such a vehicle to God for me, and can be overused. So you have to be, respectful of it. It's not something you do all the time. I think an annual visit is kind of nice. Maybe biannual. I don't know. No, but I really do love to hear that. And about soldiers and people with extreme PTSD. There's all kinds of different healing modalities. And one that's actually highly recommended is, there's neural feedback and there's something called Cereset that I use, which is biofeedback. I had a really bad head injury when I was in my 20s. I had a jet ski accident, and pretty much for 10 years after that, I couldn't sleep. And so like my brain had gotten locked in fight or flight. And so that I can tell you from firsthand experience was extremely healing and corrected my neural pathways. And I know a lot of people struggle with that, but there's more and more clinics popping up with these treatments that are like truly remarkable. You know, you could always take mushrooms too, but you know, who knows how that's going to go.
Yeah, it's crazy the variety of it too, because there's like the people who say they do psychedelics, and it's like, yeah, I probably could have guessed that before you said it.
Right.
And then, but now there's like a whole new wave of where it's like a lot more, I guess I'd say sophisticated, but I don't know if that's the right word
I
for
think
it.
that's a nice way to talk about it. Oops, sorry. Yeah, that makes me feel better about myself. I like that.
Yeah.
Sophisticated. I'm gonna wear a suit or like
Yeah,
the
that's
next
right.
time.
But it's not just like when you're growing up in high school, whatever, there's like the group of kids that you got a pretty good idea
Sure.
who's
Sure,
doing it.
yeah.
Now it's like, it's so much more. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, now there's like a real like midlife demographic that's, entertaining it or exploring,
Yeah.
if you will. The sophisticated crowd.
Yeah, that's right.
I want to go back to HoneyHoney for a minute. You guys had such a dedicated following. What was it like to step away and forge your own path as a solo artist? Did it feel like a natural evolution, or was it daunting at first?
Um, it was is as great of a band as HoneyHoney was, and as many adventures and how I cut my teeth in the music industry and learned so much about myself. Um, it became a very unhealthy dynamic for a long time. And, I would just go as far as saying it was toxic. And so I was in that toxic cycle and environment for a really long time and had kind of, when you're in those um, incorrect places, you know, the music was always a refuge, but, you know, off the stage, it wasn't great. And so I kind of became like sort of like a fraction of who I am now, like, which is really sad because HoneyHoney had such great music and I like to talk about it like it's its own thing because it is. And I have such love and compassion for the music and my time in that band. But when I got to play by myself, I mean, I just like kind of went off leash. And I was like, I got to feel everything and it was so expansive. And I actually didn't know what I was capable of until I got to do that. And it was shocking to me. It was to be so empowered and like treat that with respect. And bands are always tough. You don't always it's a very stressful lifestyle. And so like I said, I really do like HoneyHoney's how we met Joe. HoneyHoney brought me all over the world. I got to see Europe, um and now I just like it's like looking back at yourself in college or something, even though I didn't go to college. It was just my younger years, and I learned so much, and I have so much gratitude towards, my old bandmate, even though there was a lot of trouble for us. I learned so much, and I became the songwriter I am now, which I am grateful for. Um, but it was pretty painful, to be honest with you. And now, like I feel like I got a second lease on music, because it really is so different. It's so different to be operating not under duress and constant fighting and stuff like that. Like, and I don't want to say too much. And I played my role in that too. Like, everyone is accountable. Sometimes it's just the wrong ingredients, in like a chemistry project. And one of the reasons probably our shows were so great is because they were charged with a lot. And, my shows are still always charged, but it's a little different, it's a different kind of electricity.
Was there one moment that you said like, all right, I'm going to try it on my own, or was it just kind of a natural course?
Well, I had met the artist and producer Butch Walker, and he asked if I would sing backup vocals on his record Stay Gold. And I, like, before I knew it, I was playing fiddle and banjo and singing on almost every song. And it was the first time I'd worked with somebody and it wasn't difficult. It wasn't like um a stressful experience, just to stay in that, to keep it polite here, because I don't want to cause any
Yeah.
trouble. But it was so funny. Like, this is how, like, I didn't think much of myself back then. I didn't think I could ever even perform on my own or anything like that. Um, and even though that's how I started, but I asked Butch, like, hey, I've got some songs that I've written, and would you maybe want to produce them? And, like, I remember, like, writing this email and being like reading it like 20 times and just like, well, you sound a little desperate, so let's switch this up, like, just trying to not to annoy him or anything. And I mean, he must have written back within like 10 minutes and was like, "What? Oh my God, I'd be honored." And it was such a he really helped me a lot, like, to understand what I was capable of, even as a producer. Just to, like, I remember being really timid and saying, like, hey, I have an idea. Can I try something? And he, like, moved his chair and put my chair in the middle of the board. And it was like, even just as a gesture, that meant so much to me, to know that it was a good space to create and try stuff. And I love my first record with him. I named it after his studio, Ruby Red. And that was a very pivotal thing for me, because then that summer, after my record was done, um, he asked me to tour with him. So I got to open for him by myself. And that was the first time I'd played alone in like 12 years, easily. And so I remember that first show. I was in Florida. We were in Orlando, and I must have pooped 6 times before I got on stage. I couldn't, I was like, oh God, this is so awful. And then I got up there and it was just like, it was like incredible. And that was all I needed. I was like, all right, this is cool. I got this. But yeah, that was a really important time. And then shortly thereafter, the artist Hosier, Irish guy, asked me to play in his band. And that was kind of my big departure from HoneyHoney too, because I had a real job at that point. Then I was like, all right, not only am I going to take this opportunity, I'm also going to make money and, be able to build from here. And it was a crazy experience. I was home 50 days the whole year I toured with him. And it was just sort of like, from there I could just see where my potential was, and where I could go. And I'm really grateful for that. A part of me has always kind of beat myself up that I needed other people to help me, but what are you going to do?
I mean, kind of everything in life it takes. We just had Malcolm, not just, but recently had Malcolm Gladwell on the podcast.
I
If
listened
you
to
know
most of
that,
that. I really liked it. Yeah.
oh, cool, yeah. And he was like his whole book Outliers. It's like you only see everyone just sees like the success, but you don't see
Right.
that whatever from the book. It's like Bill Gates's parents worked with computer, like he had access to more computers that no one else in the country did, and he was getting it at whatever it was 14 or 16. And
Well,
yeah.
that's, I love hearing that stuff. And I really hope that the youth of today, who, like, everybody wants to be a TikTok star or YouTube or something, like, there's more to learn and experience if you know what's good for you, and, like, listening to people like Malcolm Gladwell, who, are masters of their craft, that kind of thing is so inspiring. And I'd hope, at least, you know, I don't know. I just hope that there's a return to more authentic, um, efforts for kids at least. But, the odds are against us with all what we get out of these guys,
Yeah.
the smartphone.
The instant gratification.
Yeah. I mean, I'm guilty too. I'm almost ready for a dumb phone. My husband and I talk about it all the time. Just get the phone that has text, email. It's black and white. There's no color on it.
Yeah.
And, my only other thing is that I need to be able to take pictures of my baby all the time because it's so fun. But I'm getting there. I'm almost there. Pretty soon I'll be milking cows and raising chickens. Just wait. Just wait.
That's the new dream.
Yeah, it really is.
What was the painful part of HoneyHoney?
Yeah, I just out of respect for Ben, I think it's better not to, but it was one of those things I think where we should have ended the band a long time ago and we kind of just kept going. And, there was a lot of heartbreak, not just from our own incongruencies as two people that are just very different. Like record companies just like letting us down and like, losing your ass on a record deal because like you don't really make much money. And, like it was really a tough time to be you know, medium semi-successful. But I don't hold any grudges and I will always wish him the best. And I'm pretty sure he would say the same. But it was just like when it was really time to go, it was so good for both of us just to like go live your life. Go try something else. But I think for me, I'll just speak for myself. For a very long time, I thought that band was everything, and that was it. There was nothing outside of it. And that was hard to break away from, and then to learn that I was so wrong about that was very liberating. I hope I did okay there.
That was good.
Okay.
My dad's famous he's for 4 ALS. He's famous for whenever someone says they don't want to talk about something, he'll
Try and
ask
get it
six.
out.
Yeah, 6 more times he'll ask about it.
All right, I'm changing topics on you. If you could step into a time machine and jam with any musician, dead or alive, who would it be?
Ooh. Okay. Well, Dolly Parton. I think it'd be incredible to sing with Dolly Parton. Um, I just think she's such a hoot and so talented. And like, there's something about her that breaks my heart too. Her authenticity, I really like that. Um, hmm, hmm. It's so funny. I don't think about this very often. I'm a huge Radiohead fan. So I think um, if I ever got to sing with Tom York and, or like sing over Johnny Greenwood's guitar playing, that would be insane. That would be one of the coolest things I could say. I'd be like, I'm done. I'm good. Thank you. Yeah, those are the top two that come to mind, which is weird because there's so much more. I'm sure later I'll be like, damn it, I should have said blah blah blah. But I'm, if anybody pops up, let me think. Um, I mean, we could throw a crooner in there. I think singing with Frank Sinatra, barring that he doesn't hit on me, because that would be just so weird. I just want to tell you, if I go back in time and sing with Frank Sinatra, it's strictly professional.
Don't meet your heroes.
Because then my husband's going to go back in time and kick his ass. Oh my God.
Touring is a grind, and it takes a special kind of person to thrive in that lifestyle. What's one thing you wish more people understood about life on the road?
It is not glamorous. even when you're at the top, because I've been with the top. I personally have not been with my own music, but when I played with some of the top dogs, um, it's a really strange, lonely lifestyle. Yes, it's exciting. Yes, there are adventures, but you know, like I said, in 2020 when I realized I was 35 and these other things I really wanted, like, and how small the window was, I think um I it's a mixed bag, there's so many things I've loved about touring, and there's so many things that are really difficult, and if you're not a well-rounded person, or if you have any proclivities towards drugs and alcohol, like, it's going to be troublesome for you. But thank God, like, I actually play sober. I'll have a drink here and there, but I really don't like to get drunk after my shows because you have to sing the next night, so I really have had a lot of discipline on the road, which I think has kept me healthy in spirit and mind and body, which I'm grateful for. But yeah, I mean, I would just tell people now, like, it is not for the faint of heart. And you've got a lot to do. And as it stands now, if I were just talking about touring in this country, like, gas is expensive, car rentals are expensive, or people aren't really going out as much as they used to. It's really strange. I think a lot of people got used to Netflix and staying inside and ordering DoorDash, and they don't want to have these real life experiences. So it's sort of hit or miss. And but the upside, because I don't want to be all negative, I'll talk about my favorite things on the road. One of the coolest things I got to experience in my life is I've had these wonderful relationships with my extended family, with people I would never see if I had, like, taken over my family's restaurant in Cleveland. Like, I wouldn't be going through Atlanta 2 to 3 times a year and, like, seeing my cousin Victor, and these people that I love. And it's very cool to have that familial network, and just even good friends that I've made along the road, and people that I never would have met if I weren't playing music. And that's very special and something I hold dear, among just being a real foodie and, like, eating the best food in some of the coolest places, you know like soul food in Memphis and great Italian in New York and stuff like that. That's just like, ah. For anyone who's listening, they're going to be like, what did she just do?
I imagine that you've had some wild moments traveling from city to city. Any unforgettable stories from the road?
I don't know why. I just told my parents the story the other night, but I mean, I don't know if this is a really good story. I'll try to think of another while I tell this one. But I was playing in Los Angeles in 2019, and there was sort of this, like, boutique hotel downtown that, like, featured me for the night, and I played in their bar, and it was really fun. It was, like, full of people, and got to stay at the hotel for the night, and it was the first show of, like, a month-long tour that I was embarking on. And in the morning, I was, like, woken up very early by the hotel management, and I was like, oh my god, who did what? Who's in jail? And they were like, can you come downstairs? And I'm like, oh God, okay. And they were like, we're really sorry, but to tell you this, but valet accidentally damaged your van in the garage last night. And I'm like, oh, it can't be that bad. Oh, it's totally fine. I thought you were going to, tell me anyway, the worst case scenario. But they bring this van down, and it was, the whole roof of this thing was, like, peeled open like a tuna can. They had just run it into the ceiling. And I had to spend the next day, like, on the phone for hours being like, no, but I didn't do it. Somebody else did, and they're going to pay you. And it was like, you're like scrambling to, and I was trying to get to San Diego on time. Anyway, we were re-gifted a much more disgusting vehicle. That was it was a brand new van. Like, it was truly brand new.
This sounds like my dad reached out to you before the podcast, because while we were in Florida, I took his van and drove into a garage that was too short. I didn't I didn't rip the whole ceiling off, but there is a pretty big dent.
Well, for a while, like for the first, like, my like, hustler brain was like, well, we could just duct tape it. No, we could probably be fine with that. And like, I remember like weeks later driving through Taos, New Mexico in the other van, and there was a blizzard. And I was like, we never would have survived this blizzard with the roof open in that
No
first
roof.
van. But oh man, it happens. It happens.
I don't know how it happened, but it did happen. And I don't think it really should happen, but I'll
Right.
take it. I'll take the sympathy.
You know what? I'm glad everyone's okay.
Yeah, that's right.
I guess that's like the first one that comes to mind. I got kind of snowed in at I want to say it was a venue in Detroit. HoneyHoney was opening up for Matt Nathanson. It's a long time ago. And we were playing at this venue that used to be a church, and they turned into a music venue, and there was a blizzard, and we were stuck there for a while. Like we couldn't get out. But I don't think that's as good a story as the van. If I think of anything cooler, I'll let you know.
I don't know, Dad, if you're going to ask about this, I might steal your thunder, and it's not even about you, it's about your husband. But I just have to say as a side note, True Detective season 1 is my favorite all-time show.
Isn't it amazing?
It's unbelievable. All of them are good, but season 1 is just like, it's the perfect.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
The writing, the acting, it's so good.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I guess this is a fun side note. Matthew and Woody just moved back to Austin, and Matthew lives like 2 streets over from us. And so we've been seeing them a lot, and it's been really cool for them to be reunited because they're so many years apart, and now we're pretty much neighbors. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, my husband is extraordinary, and I'm so proud of him. And like, it is really cool to just admire him so much, like he's just like, he's an actual genius, like the real kind, and which, has its downsides too, when it comes to arguing, but, but he's my favorite thing in the world. And actually this last summer, there was this art collective that came through Austin, and they wanted to honor season 1, and it was the 10-year anniversary from season 1. And he spoke at a panel, and it was so cool to sit and watch him. And then I actually performed some music at the end, and I did the theme song for season 1. And it was
so
such
cool.
a fun night for us. But I was just like, I love watching him speak in a professional setting. And I actually just like we're best friends. So like, I like to hear him talk all the time, but it was very cool. And there were a lot of people there. There's a lot of people that feel that way. Like it's pretty, like when you kind of see the quality of TV that we have these days, which is pretty bad. It's nice to like remember this like iconic piece of work. And yeah, I'm with you. I'm a huge fan.
I can't believe it. I say to people, if you could only watch one season of anything, it's that.
100%.
You have new music coming out soon. Can you tell us about the inspiration behind this latest project? How does it differ from what you've done before?
Yeah. Okay. I do have new music. I have a whole record, and I would say it's a lot less folky and more, I don't want to use the word pop because it's not that either. It's just, it's got more production on it, and it's really coming from like a much more worldly perspective, as well as fulfilled. Like I said earlier, there's love songs. There's, no lack of intensity, because I guess I'm an intense person. I think it's fair to say. And yeah, I don't think I've ever heard my music sound like this, or been more excited about where it's at. And it is different. But I think people are going to like it. There's a good cameo on there too. But yeah, I'm trying to figure out the best way to release it. And something I did recently was release one of my new songs, on a platform called Fountain FM, which is through Adam Curry, who Rogan calls him the Podfather. He like invented podcasting. He used to be an MTV VJ, and he has a great podcast called No Agenda. And he's a brilliant dude. And oddly, just putting this out there. So, you don't make any money off Spotify. Like I get checks for $5 from 28,000 streams off a song. And that's about the average. It's more like 30,000 is $5.
Wow.
So it's pretty bad. It's very rough. And this platform involves like you have a wallet, right? So if I listen to a podcast, I have it set up where, 50 cents or 10 cents every minute is taken out of my wallet. And so these people are getting my listening money. And I can do more than that. I can do nothing. You can listen for free. But what I found is that people value your music more when they're paying for it. And I put one song on Fountain, and like this might sound silly, but it's really not. I've made like $700 off the song, whereas I've never made that much money on Spotify in 10 years, and I've had millions of streams. Isn't that crazy? So I'm still kind of it's a real ground floor model right now, but I really enjoyed exploring it, and I'm going to put more music out there. And at some point, I'm sure I'll put it on all the major streaming. But until then, I'm really enjoying experiencing this new community and a different approach to art, because it feels good to like get some return on my investment. So
I can't believe that. I didn't know the Spotify metrics were that bad.
It's 0.005 cents for every play.
Wow.
So like that's how, and even like it's funny, like even the like really successful artists like Snoop Dogg is like really getting in. He's been speaking out about it, but and to that end, it's an interesting just sort of psychology around streaming. Like I personally, and I wish this weren't the case, but I really don't listen to new music, and I want to. But whenever I have the opportunity to listen to music and Spotify is like new artist, I just usually listen to the stuff I always listen to. And I think there's something to be said about when it's free and you're not buying it and you're not having this like more coherent even experience. You don't value it as much. And it's sort of like dampened my desire to listen to new music, which is strange because I love music. But I've learned about new artists on Value for Value and on Fountain, and I've really enjoyed it. Probably because
awesome. I'll have to check it out. I've never heard of that. I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's worth checking out. So I have a song called Worried that's on Fountain right now. And there's other kind of like conglomerate streamings sites around Value for Value. And what happens is like I have a Bitcoin wallet. So if I want to convert it to cash, I can, or if I want to just like let it grow, I'm kind of into that just as an investment because I'm not really familiar with that as much, but I like the idea of like putting stock into it. But yeah, I'm going to be releasing music on Fountain and then eventually, stream it, throw it into the void of Spotify.
At 0.0005. That's crazy.
It's pretty rough.
Troy said you might play something for us. Are you taking any requests or do you have something prepared? Maybe a song from the upcoming album?
I am not prepared, but I can also send you something over the weekend. I have lots to send you. I feel so bad that I'm not prepared, but
That's totally fine.
I would love to play Worried if anyone wants to hear that. And I can give
That'd
you the
be
studio
awesome.
version or live. And would it be okay to send that to you guys in the next couple days?
Yeah,
Okay.
Send it. We'll clip it and put it in.
I worry all day and all night. I guess I've always been this way my whole life, worrying from sun imagine light burning up inside. I stumble through the day, blacking out sometimes. Worrying is hijacking my mind. 'Cause I let you take the wheel, then you drove me crazy, made me feel the way you feel. Now I'm all mixed up and stranded, and I don't know what's real. And I'm worried about if I'm gonna heal. Am I gonna When the night comes, my freeway of thoughts, high-speed chases where I am both criminal and cop. I run myself in circles around what I'm not, worrying about problems that I've got. 'Cause I love you take the wheel, then you drive me crazy, make me feel the way you feel. Now I'm all mixed up and stranded, and I don't know what's real. And I'm worried about if I'm gonna heal. Am I gonna heal? Am I gonna heal? Cause I let you take the wheel, then you drove me crazy, made me feel the way you feel. Now I'm all mixed up and stranded, and I don't know what's real. And I'm worried about if I'm gonna heal. Am I gonna heal? Am I gonna
That was great. Thank you for sharing it with us. At the end, we need to also play your song Best Out of Me, which is my personal favorite. When you write a song, do you hear how it should be performed live from the start, or does it evolve over time?
I think it evolves over time. Um, I definitely don't uh well, vocally I usually know where it's going to land, especially when it comes to harmonies and like cuz that's sort of my strongest area of musicianship is singing. So, I usually do know where that's going to exist, but some of that stuff's really fun to figure out with the band too, in real time. Um, and I have some really, really talented people I get to play with. So that's kind of like a really fun aspect too. It's one thing if you tell everybody what to play and you can always play it just like the record. But when when the musicians I play with get to sort of express their own translation, of the music, that's always really fun. As long as they're not overplaying and being jerks. Because that does happen. You can be like, hey, that's really cool, but you got to, scale it back about 40%.
In all of the craziness of being an artist, when and how did you meet your husband?
I was here in Austin for about 3 weeks, and I was invited to a dinner party, which I was really excited about because I had, like, just been really restricted in Los Angeles from socializing. And uh, I met some of my now greatest friends at this party. And funny enough, I had this big declaration I'd made to myself, but also everyone at this dinner, that I wasn't dating anyone for 9 months. I came here to rebuild my life and work on my career, and I didn't want anyone distracting me from what was, the task at hand. And I'd literally just told the host of the party, "Yeah, I'm not dating anyone for 9 months. Like, not a, like, it's just about me. I might get a dog." And like mid conversation, Nick walked in and he shook my hand, and we stood there like holding hands for like at least 10 seconds, just staring into each other's eyes. And it was profound. I mean, it was like, and I meet people all the time. I've met really famous people and stuff like that, and that's cool. But we've talked about this experience so many times, and like it was like a bell ringing, and like from God, that was like, "You two, now do the thing," And we just like, it was funny because I was like struck in that moment, just staring at him and having this like just overwhelming um experience of like, we just couldn't stop looking at each other. And it was funny that after that, like, somebody's passing around a guitar and I'm singing, and then, going outside and everybody's, drinking, and we're sitting outside, and it was getting late, and I was always aware of where Nick was in the room. And I was like kind of scared, and also very guarded. Like, I don't want to date a Hollywood person. They're scary. And so I just said to everybody, "It's so great to meet you. I got to get going." And Nick kind of like beelines across the room toward me. And he said, why are you leaving?" And I went, "It's late." And he said, "Well, okay, well, what are we going to do about this?" And just like pointing at, "What are we going to do about this?" And I was like, he said, "Will you just take a walk with me?" And we started walking, and then we started holding hands. And he said, "I really want to kiss you." And I was like, "Well, I'm not dating right now." He said, "Well, I didn't say I wanted to date you. I just said I wanted to kiss you." And I mean, it was like the minute we shook hands, we were together. It was just so powerful. And we have had such an incredible journey. There's you'd have to do a whole podcast to talk about it. It's wild. And you talk about God's hand in your life, like, it's just, there's no denying this force behind our union. And it's hilarious. I mean, like, the first few weeks we were together, like, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. I was like, my body couldn't handle all this love and this excitement. Like, it was almost made me sick. But everybody's super healthy and well fed now. We're good. Yeah, he's the love of my life. Him and our kids are my world.
At the end of every episode, I like to give our guests the opportunity to brag about their family because I think there's nothing more important in the world.
Me too. You want me to go for it?
Go for it.
Yeah. Gosh. Okay. I have the most fun parents in the world. They're hilarious, and they're always cooking incredible dinners. When they come to visit, it's like, feels like Christmas every day. I adore them. My husband is not only a genius and just like a total babe. Like, my husband is so hot, and he turns 50 this year, but he has the body of a 35-year-old, and he doesn't have to do anything. He's just like jacked. And I'm really lucky. He's so beautiful to me. He has the most gorgeous speaking voice. I could listen to him read the phone book. I love when he reads to me. He is also hilarious. Like you would think the creator of True Detective would be this like brooding, dark guy, which he is that, but he's so funny. Making each other laugh is always a priority in our household. So we're always kind of like, flirting like teenagers and cracking each other up, which is a blast. And our kids are magical. My stepdaughter is one of the most talented artists I've ever met, and she's only 16. She can paint, she can draw, she can sculpt. She has an affinity for effects makeup, which is also kind of terrifying because sometimes it's like gore, and I'm like, I don't know how you did that in the last 2 hours in your room, but you got to wash it off before dinner because I'm not going to eat a meal with you. But she's the kindest, the sweetest. She's brilliant. She can sing, and she's my first daughter, and I am so fortunate to be her mom. And my little baby girl is like Rosie. She's 17 months this month. She's like the sun. I mean, she is just so happy. She is always dancing like you wouldn't believe a baby could dance. She's got serious moves. She loves to sing. She sleeps 12 hours every night. I am so blessed. We are so fortunate that we get that. And yeah, I feel like that was a good brag. I feel like
That was a good brag.
I'm almost embarrassed now because I don't like to brag.
No, that's a good brag.
Oh God, I'm going to be insecure about this later.
The good thing for you is every single, that's the last question you asked before we do the segment every time. So you're in good company.
Okay. All right. I'm ready.
Now on to our final word segment where we ask our guests a few rapid fire questions. What was the happiest moment in your life?
When I had my baby girl, Rosalie.
What is the biggest adversity you've faced?
Conflicts within myself. I know that's a little obtuse, but yeah, fighting with myself.
What are you most excited about?
I'm most excited about moving to a home that has some land and has like a real space for our kids to play and for us to thrive. I'm really excited about that. And to that end, like a suitable place where both of us as creatives can work comfortably. Like my husband and I we've kind of done a few cracks at our own podcast, and we want to work together more, doing music for his film and television and things like that. So I feel like this kind of vision board that we have for this next step in our lives together as a family, and we haven't landed on anywhere yet, but just the discussion and the ideas that we're creating around our next home is really exciting to me.
That's awesome. The next one. What advice would you give your younger self?
Oh man, you're only getting started. Why are you worrying so much about this thing? This is nothing. And your career isn't everything, but you're doing a great job. And make sure you wear your arch supports because your feet aren't getting any younger.
That's a first. We've never had someone recommend arch supports.
Yeah.
The next one is, do you have any book recommendations for us?
Ooh. Okay. I'm reading some Elmore Leonard right now. That's just fun for like if you want a nonfiction. Yeah. Fiction. I'm reading Kill Shot by Elmore Leonard. It's very entertaining. And I recently read Good Energy by Callie and Casey Means, which I think is really good for people if you're not as inclined to nutrition and healthy lifestyle. There's a lot of good information in there.
The name of our podcast is Nothing Left Unsaid. Do you have anything you want to say?
I just want to thank you guys so much for having me. My life is a wonder to me, and I'm always kind of surprised when anyone wants to talk to me about music because I really, and I say this from a loving place, I have no expectations with my career anymore. And so when someone reaches out and mentions that they like my music, I am truly touched um, and so grateful. And yeah, I guess something left unsaid, as scary and confusing as the world is and how we experience it through our phones or other, screens, I believe in the goodness of people, and that whatever's happening, there's a greener grass on the other side of this. And I think it's really easy for a lot of us to be scared and I don't know. If anyone needs to hear that, just hang on. You're not alone. And I think it's going to get better. I think it's going to get a lot better, actually.
That's great. And
Yeah.
then this is the last question, and then we'll wrap it up. I ask every guest at the end of every episode. We wanted to make sure the podcast wasn't just about like ALS or sports or it has an author. So we ask everybody at the end, who are a couple people that you know personally that you think we should try to get on the podcast?
Oh, well, my husband, because he's awesome. Let me think. I mean, Matthew and Woody are always super fun to talk to. I don't know if they do it because they're like mega stars, and I don't know what their whole thing is like. But think about this. Maybe Gary Clark. Gary's awesome. He's one of my favorite musicians, and he's a good friend, Gary Clark Jr. And he talks a lot more now than he used to. He used to be pretty quiet. Yeah, I think that's a good.
Yeah, those are great.
But also, when we get off this call, if there's anybody that you guys are interested in that I might know, let me know, and I'll see if I can bridge the gap for you.
Suzanne, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you for your time today. I have to tell you that I have downloaded every one of your songs that's out right now and look forward to the new music coming out. I am genuinely a huge fan.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really have enjoyed this a lot. And you guys
thanks
are
so much.
Thank you.
This is awesome.
Baby, I know I was jealous and mean. I got lost in the anger that roars over me like a tidal wave, rotten, bewitched and begotten from broken things inside of me. And the words I shelled out at you the night before are still scattered like shrapnel all over the floor, and I'm sweeping and I'm dusting and desperately busting my back to get you back through my door. You can write me off, honey, you can rip out our pages, you can tell all your friends how we burned in the blazes, but I swear I won't be a train that keeps crashing best out of me. And I see it in my family tree, yes I do. All those murderous words that'll cut you in two, and I don't want it in me. That haunted history that bruises the fruit black and blue. You can write me off, honey, you can rip out our pages, tell all your friends how we burned in the blazes, but I swear I won't be a train that keeps crashing and burning the best out of me. fire and passion, the best of intentions, and I know sorrow will make its way out in the smoke. You can write me off, honey, and rip out our pages. You can tell all your friends how we burned in the blazes, but I swear I won't be a train that keeps crashing and burning the best out of me, the best out of me.
Today's episode is brought to you by the ALS Investment Fund, a specialized biotech venture capital investment firm focused on neurodegenerative diseases, particularly ALS. They manage a large and diversified worldwide portfolio of ALS-related companies, collaborating with a global network of scientists, clinicians, foundations, and patient advocates to accelerate therapeutic development, investing for a world without ALS. Discover more about their mission and impact at alsinvestmentfund.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, consider supporting the podcast for free by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform, leaving a review, and sharing it with your friends. Your support means the world to us. This episode of Nothing Left Unsaid is brought to you by 11 Labs. Their groundbreaking technology makes a huge difference, and we're grateful for their support. To learn more, visit 11labs.io. A substantial portion of our sponsorship proceeds go to tackleals.com, funding cutting-edge ALS research. If you'd like to join the fight and contribute, visit tackleals.com. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on Nothing Left Unsaid.